Okay, here we go. Take two. Today is December 21st, 2019. As I said in the previous video, which was about 3 minutes ago, getting close to the new year. So I forgot that I had a time commitment that somebody was going to show up to the house real quick and I had to give them something. So I saw them pulling up in the driveway and I was like, it's my responsibility. I'm supposed to give them something. So I had to stop the video. Anyway, long story short, we're commencing again. As I was saying in the previous video, in case you missed it, I just finished up the next 3 or 4 weeks of programming for Linchpin, and in doing that, it always gets my mind going, and I start, long story short, programming is the topic that people seem to have an endless thirst about, always want to know more about, and I can never seem to do enough videos about, so this is yet another video on programming. We'll see where it goes. I spoke a second ago in the first video that I just deleted that at the level 1 seminar you get a programming lecture that can last 60 to 90 minutes probably, depending upon who's giving it and how closely they stick to the timeline. And that video is the basics, the bare bones basics. That's just driver's ed. You finish driver's ed, you've got your, you can test for your driver's license and get your driver's license. Doesn't mean you're a very accomplished and talented driver out on the road. You still need to go out there and, bump a couple cars in a parking lot, casually roll a stop sign every now and then, blah, blah, blah. And then, little by little through experience, you get better and better. But that's what you get there at the level 1. And then you got to go out and just through the trials and tribulations of real life, cut your teeth on programming, if that's something that you enjoy. Some people enjoy programming. They don't really enjoy coaching people. Some people love coaching people, hate writing workouts, and everything in between. But if it's something you're interested in, let's dive into it. A lot of these things will be an oversimplification because we could do just a whole bunch of 30-minute to 1-hour videos depending upon what direction we want to go. So let's dive into it. We'll dive into it based upon that one sentence that I like to say every now and then, which I feel is appropriate. And this is for general physical preparedness, GPP, CrossFit. And if all this is new to you, you should at least know what GPP is. You should know CrossFit's definition of fitness, what intensity means, what variance means. All that can be found in, what is fitness, what is CrossFit, and just some kind of cornerstone documents. So I would recommend making sure that you devour those, before we go down some of these roads. Anyway, long story short. The sentence is, live your life in couplets and triplets, go heavy at least once a week, every now and then go long. That's it. And in all honesty, that's programming. Now, from that springs, a lifelong pursuit. That would be the same deal as, from all my experience as a SEAL, and I did a lot of shooting, went to sniper school, I could distill down shooting mechanics to you in, your grip, your front sight focus, some breathing control, and a nice smooth trigger squeeze to the rear on the front pad of the finger. There, boom, there you go. You're an expert shooter. It doesn't really work that way. You've got the basics, and then you're going to go ahead and polish those for a very long time, and then dive into some nuances when some things seem to go sideways. It's the same deal with programming. So, live your life in couplets and triplets. Go heavy at least once a week. Every now and then go long. So, okay, if that's the oversimplification, now where do we go from there? There are some major items that should be high on your list if you're programming one workout or a week's worth of workouts or a month's worth of workouts. And these are movements that we want to intelligently vary. And we've got the movements that we're going to choose, the repetition ranges that we're going to pursue, the loadings, and the time domains. And there's more, but that's a nice little encapsulation to start with right there. And then from each one of those, we spring off into other alleys and rabbit holes. So under movements, you could have, going below parallel, pulling from the ground, pulling from overhead towards your body, pulling towards your body from the front, pressing overhead, pressing away from your body, hinging at the hip, not hinging at the hip, that you could geek out and figure out, what am I doing in the sagittal plane versus the frontal plane versus the transverse plane. You can go down anything that you want to go down, and you can choose to embrace exercise physiology terms. You can not choose to embrace them. Having a knowledge of what they are and how they work is a wonderful thing. But once that knowledge is in there, I personally would rather communicate in a way that if I was speaking to my grandmother, she would know what it is that I'm talking about. So I like to put things in just kind of common everyday language when I talk about what I'm doing. So even under movements, like I just said there, you could create a very long list of things that you would want to hit or not want to hit. And then that list, now just under movements, right? We discussed rep ranges, loadings, time domains, and said there were others. Then from movements, we sprang under, below parallel, above parallel, pulling from the ground, pressing overhead, etc., etc., etc. Now, from there, then you could even spring off. Let's just choose one thing on that list. We had below parallel on that list. Well, then from there, we've got a whole bunch of options. What are we going to do? We can go below parallel with a back squat, a front squat, an overhead squat, an air squat, a thruster, a wall ball, a walking lunge, a hang snatch, a full snatch, a squat clean and jerk. The list goes on and on. That's just for below parallel. And then you can play that same game with everything else. And I will tell you, if you try, where to go with this? You could make a list so long of all the things that you want to cover, or the possible ways that the human body could move, or the possible everything, that you're certainly not going to cover it all with one workout. And you're certainly, depending upon how long that list is, there's a good chance you're not going to cover it all in 1 week. So now you're left with some sort of a conundrum. You can either go, well, I've got to cover it all this week, so now I'm going to do 2 or 3 workouts a day and cover it all. Or every workout that I make is going to be this huge, monstrous grinder because I've got to cover all these bases. It can't be done. You'll drive yourself absolutely crazy. So in all of these items that we're going to talk about, they all have value. They all hit you in some sort of way. But some you get more bang for your buck from than others. And so some of your mainstays you will latch onto and hit with a bit more frequency than some other things. And those will be your main courses. And the other ones you'll sprinkle on every now and then. So that was a very rudimentary chat about movements, a very rudimentary chat about the major things you may want to look up, and that list was not comprehensive. But then we broke it down to even just below parallel, all those different options that we have. And then all of those different options that we mentioned, from back squat, front squat, overhead squat, thruster, wall ball, lunge, the different sorts of snatches, squat cleans, etc. Well then, on every single one of those, we could have an entirely different loading and make each one of them a very different stimulus in and of itself. So, again, if you're just trying to scratch down on a piece of paper all these things that you want to cover, you'll probably have to hire a counselor just to help your stress, because you'll drive yourself absolutely bonkers. Now, people can geek out to the nth degree, and one of the great ways to know that somebody is geeking out to the nth degree is the larger exercise science words that they choose. They're probably geeking out to the nth degree. And that in no way, shape, or form means that what they're proposing that you should do is effective. The two are not related. I hate to tell you that. So, like I said, try to keep it, know what you're doing, know what you're trying to accomplish, but try to keep it as simple as you can in your head, as organized as you can in your head, and then when you articulate it to somebody else, so they can follow the conversation of what it is that you're trying to accomplish with the human body. And there are, I was going to say there are major things to worry about and minor things to worry about, but maybe we'll go down the list a little bit more. So that was movements. And then if we went down to the next one, to repetition ranges, in very simple terms, you could have everything from doing 1 repetition to over 100 repetition. Of course, it depends on the movement. You're not going to do a 1 rep max double under. You'll do a 1 rep max squat, 1 rep max deadlift. However, you might put 500 double unders into a workout. It's unlikely that you'll put 500 clean and jerks into a workout. So again, you're going to have this large degree of variance on the repetition ranges as well, and to some degree, where that number of repetitions falls will be depending upon the movement that you chose, the stimulus that you're looking to get out of that workout, and then the loading comes into play as well. But you have to hit... I see Pete Wan just said, I have a 1 rep max double under. That would be an amazing little endeavor, right? Probably don't want to do like a 1 rep max kettlebell swing. There are some movements that lend themselves a bit better to some loadings than others. So anyway, but you do want to cover all of your bases in that. And in general, your lower reps are going to be on your classic strength days, etc., etc. Now, then if we went from rep ranges now to loadings. Loadings is going to be everything from literally no loading, it's just your body weight, you're doing a burpee or something like that, to maximal effort and everything in between. And then you've got your time domains from the very short to the very long. And all of these things have to come together in some sort of organized symphony to keep the athlete happy, healthy, and advancing physically forward. That's the real goal and the trick. So the key is, it's not hard to make a hard workout. You just put a bunch of movements, a bunch of loading. Congratulations, you made a hard workout. Doesn't mean that you made an effective workout. And that's the difference between what you may just ingest in one lecture, in one reading of a book, in one whatever, and then as you start to get out and program on your own and get some battle scars on yourself from doing things right, from doing them poorly, from garnering lessons learned, from interacting with your peers, then you slowly start to develop some sort of level of proficiency or mastery of programming, which seems very easy at first, right? Like you're just writing workouts. But taking all of those things that I just mentioned, and there's more than what we just casually mentioned in this Instagram video, and the art in it is to take everything that I just said there and then organize it in an intelligently laid out manner that covers all of the bases that you're looking to cover, from repetition ranges to movements to loadings to time domains, all of those things, takes those into account, covers all of your bases, and you laid them out in a way that allows the athlete that is performing them to bump into gently, their limits, so that you stress the system just enough that it can recover and adapt. And then you don't overwork any one particular area too frequently that the athlete doesn't have time to recover, and therefore they have retrograde. They're sliding the other direction. So you have to lay everything out that somehow all of your bases are covered. It's done in a fashion that allows the athlete to push appropriately hard so they get that wonderful dose of intensity, and they're feeling good enough from not being overtrained and not being beat up that they can walk into the gym with intensity, because the muscle groups and the repetitions and the loadings and the time domains that they have to do today, they can express some sort of intensity because what they've done the last couple of days hasn't interfered too much. Unless, of course, you had some intentional interference that you wanted to, but then there's a whole other nuanced can of worms. And then on top of all that, you have to do that without overtraining the athlete. And then here's the part that how this falls into a textbook or a class, I'm not sure. And this is maybe what also starts to make something from science to art or whatnot. But I think anyway, that you have to do it in a way that's not only does everything that I just said, that it's not only effective, because if it's not effective, who's going to do it anyway? So it has to be effective. I mean, there's your test right there. But then the key is if you can make it fun, now you're really onto something. If you can take all of those different aspects that I just mentioned and laying them out just in a way that's effective and doesn't overtrain the athlete and has all aspects of their fitness from their engine to their body weight to their barbell work moving forward consistently as months go by, that's incredible. But then to do that and then actually somehow make a workout that people look at a workout and go, oh, that looks fun. And I don't know how you define that, right? But it is something that I think is very important. And I think, I try anyway, to make workouts not only effective, but fun. Because it would be, we're human beings. You could potentially make something really, really effective and just so god-awful, boring, and repetitive that people aren't going to show up. Because most people aren't just this tower of ninja discipline that can just do something phenomenally boring every day because it yields a result. Most people, to some degree, like to have a good time. So if you can do all this and somehow make them like, I like the look of that. I'm going to hit that. And then unbeknownst to them, they're getting fit at the same time, and they're not getting overtrained, you're really onto something good. Okay, here's the last thing that I'll say. This might be controversial is probably not the word. It might be unsettling to some people. It might make some folks unhappy. And it's not my intention. It's not my intention to make anybody unhappy. It's just my intention to share with everybody what I've learned. And even if some of those things that I've learned are unpopular opinions, it's still what I've learned. And it's still, what my eyes have shown me, what the thousands of athletes under my care and the data that they provided to show me, everyone else that I've talked to and interacted with, yada, yada, yada. The time domains piece can be an interesting one. And I think this is where it can be easy for some people to unnecessarily overcomplicate things, but probably with the best of intentions. They're probably doing it thinking that they're doing the right thing. But I don't think it's as accurate as some folks believe. So what I'm trying to say is, so if you read What is Fitness, you're going to have one of the parts is CrossFit's third fitness standard, which is the metabolic pathways. And we list 3 metabolic pathways. We've got the phosphagen or the phosphocreatine, the glycolytic, and then the oxidative or the aerobic pathway. And there's a nice little, it's an oversimplification. Yes, it's not a 4-year degree in biochemistry, but there's a nice little, synopsis there in What is Fitness. And in very simple terms, it's short, medium, and long time domain for efforts. And you could also lay intensity into that as well. So the phosphocreatine, very, very short time domain because of that very high intensity. You've got the glycolytic, which is also known as the lactate, moderate time domain, moderate intensity. And then you have the oxidative or aerobic pathway. Again, this is an oversimplification. Long time domain, and just by its very nature, a lower intensity level. Now, those are things that you have to take into account on one of those aspects of programming that I mentioned, which is time domains. But here's where I think people can lose the mark. Try to make it too sciencey and not do themselves any favors. Which is, one of the things that Greg Glassman used to say, and funny, he was correct, was, okay, we've got these 3 metabolic pathways, and this article came out in 2002. And he used to say, we've got these 3 metabolic pathways. However, if you just program, and you try to program short, medium to long, without so much thinking to yourself, I'm going to create a workout that right now that is, this amount of time in the phosphocreatine pathway, and then we're going to have this amount of time, this is a lactate workout right here. I understand where that thought can come from, and I heavily studied this stuff as well when my full-time occupation was lecturing about it. But, he always used to say, which is, the human body is not so well understood that highly specialized protocols yield the benefits that most people think that they do. And credit where credit is due, the man was ahead of his time in that. And he used to say, like, hey, we've got these 3 metabolic pathways, but let's say that they find a 4th metabolic pathway, okay? Scientists are always discovering something new. So in 10 years or 50 years, a 4th metabolic pathway is discovered. Well then, what happens? If you've been missing this metabolic pathway and you're training the entire time, right? Well, you're going to be like, oh geez, you're going to be scrambling. However, if you're going short, medium, and long in an intelligently laid out fashion, then there's a really good chance that that 4th pathway that they discover is either going to be short, medium, or long. You don't have too many other options there. Let's say that they discover 15 new pathways over the course of the next 100 years. You're either going to be playing catch-up continually when this new pathway pops up, or if you've been laying things out and covering your bases in short, medium, and long, there's going to be a really good chance that you're doing exactly what you need to be doing to deliver some well-rounded GPP. And lo and behold, I think a few years ago there was another pathway. I think the cancer scientists unearthed either the Brooks pathway, or the place where they found it was the Brooks Institute. It was something Brooks, if you want to research that a little bit on your own. So I'm very lucky for my occupation at CrossFit Health. A large part of what I do is interacting with physicians and doctors on a continuous basis, and I've been very lucky to speak with some very intelligent and very honest and genuine, like tenured professors at prestigious universities that are in the exercise physiology department, who it's fair to say they probably have more exercise science knowledge than myself or anyone watching or commenting on this video. And they will be the first to tell you that with regards to high-intensity training, the world of exercise science knows very, very, very little. So if somebody is just very passionately holding on to this, I know exactly how the human body works, I know exactly all about the metabolic pathways, I know exactly what's happening here, and this particular piece of training precisely nails it, they're probably very passionately incorrect. It is what it is, because from everyone that I've spoken to that has a much larger brain than I do, the science is still developing, because in all honesty, everyone here doing CrossFit and doing high-intensity training in the way that we're doing it is a relatively new thing in the landscape of just exercise science. And so it is what it is. So we will continue to go short, medium, and long to intelligently lay them out and to cover all of our bases. And short can be 10 seconds. All right? So your 1 rep max clean. We're doing 50-meter dashes. 10 seconds on the assault bike, things of that nature, out to the very long of, 1 hour workouts. I think I got off track for a second. But like I said, some things do give you more bang for your buck than others, right? So if you said, all right, look, I'm forcing you to tell me you can, for a second, let's actually just say that the 3 metabolic pathways that were previously mentioned, that's all there is in the world, period, end of story. You have to accept that. And then now, the next part is, you have to spend your entire life in just one of those pathways. Which one would it be? Again, luckily we don't live in that world, we can do them all, but I would say the glycolytic and lactate pathway, that moderate intensity, moderate time domain, peaks at around 60 seconds, can last out to a couple of minutes, based upon the exercise science that at this point we think is true. But that is a pathway that has tremendous benefit on both sides of the equation. So that can give you some capacity in the shorter time domain and some capacity in the longer time domain, where if you just intentionally biased your training and all you did was lived in the oxidative aerobic pathway, long time domain all the time, which by its very nature is low intensity, that's not going to translate very well to the glycolytic pathway or the phosphocreatine pathway. And the other is true as well. If you just lived in that sub 10 second time domain, you would develop some incredible skills there, but it wouldn't give you capacity moving the other way. So luckily we don't have to do that. We're going to do all 3, and we're going to continue to do all 3. But it's just some sort of interesting stuff to kind of roll around. So anyway, I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Oh, let me take a look and see if we've got anything here. Okay, this is the point where down the road when I make this into a podcast, you wonder why I've kind of stopped talking. What's happening? What's happening is I'm leaning into the screen and scrolling to see if I missed any nice questions from anybody that maybe we can dive into. Okay, so far not too much going on, just a lot of waves. I appreciate that. Okay. People enjoying the variants. Oh, quick question. I like to do your workouts fully with no clock when I can. Thoughts, ... That is from FletCC2. So I guess my thoughts on not running a clock. I don't mind the no clock. I don't. So obviously, one of the other big tenets of CrossFit is measurable, observable, and repeatable data. And measurable is not only the loading on the bar, but the time on the clock, etc., etc. So that does come into the fact of tracking yourself so that you can take an honest assessment, look back over the last 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and say, hey, I've done Helen twice, I've done a deadlift this many times, Cindy this many times. I tracked it all down and I can see that things are moving in the right direction. You're only going to be able to do that with data. However, that being said, let's say that you did all those same workouts, and this is something we used to say at the level 1 all the time. I'm not making this up. Let's say you did all those same workouts, same intensity, same passion, same programming, same everything, but you never ran a clock, and let's say on a heavy day, you never knew the weight on the bar, okay? Like you just start with an empty bar in the back squat, which you're obviously not going to hurt yourself with, and then 2 people come in and they put some plates on. But you don't know if they put on 25s or 35s, and then they put a little more weight on, a little more weight on, never overdoing it, but you just kept doing it like, that was good. I felt safe. It'll go up a little more, and you just went to whatever was heavy that day. Weren't sure what it was. You went heavy yet appropriate, then you stopped, and they put away the weights, secret weights. You had no idea. And that's how you pulled every deadlift. The question is, would you still get fit? I tend to think yes, you would still get fit, even without the data. But what you wouldn't have is the ability to take an honest look back and see if there was one section that was lagging compared to others, so on and so forth. But just the fact that you're off the couch, doing functional movements with intelligently programmed variants, getting your heart rate up, you're bringing some intensity to the table, you're doing fantastic. And if running the clock makes walking into the gym not fun, and they feel this pressure of, I'm always fighting this darn clock, and what if this workout's 2 seconds slower than it was last time, and it makes you just not enjoy it? Well, then the heck with the clock. Don't run the clock. I would much rather see somebody work out for the rest of their life doing functional movements with variance at intensity with no clock than run the clock, put all that pressure on themselves, and burn out. And of course, the ideal situation would be that they are doing CrossFit and running the clock and not feeling that pressure. But if I only had to make those 2 options, I would say absolutely, get yourself in there and the heck with the clock. Let's see. Nacho_Diaz 25. Hey Pat, would you prefer volume or intensity in the training? I mean, some days stress is huge and it's difficult to keep up with both. So I've been hopefully quite vocal about this. I'm an intensity over volume guy. Period. End of story. And for a couple of reasons. I think it's more beneficial to the overwhelming majority of the population. I think most people, one workout a day, intelligently programmed with whatever degree of intensity they feel like bringing that day. It's relative to the individual's physical and psychological tolerances, like they say at the level 1. That's all you're going to need. And that's going to allow you to feel good, to not overtrain, and to still hopefully make it feel fun and make you want to walk into the gym the next day and hit it again. More volume, I just don't think most folks need it. Not by a long shot. And the folks who do need it, there are some people that need more volume. If you want to compete in CrossFit, that's what makes you just happy. To do it right and to do it well, you're going to need more volume. Not necessarily a ton of volume, but you will need more volume than I'm going to do, or more volume than 99% of the people walking the earth should do, just because you will be exposed to things in competition that will require more volume. But I think there's another part of that, which is you have to also define you want to compete in CrossFit. What does that mean? Does that mean you want to go to the CrossFit Games? Okay, that's competing in CrossFit. Or is there a local throwdown in your town or city that does 3 workouts in one day and you just kind of want to roll down there and compete for fun? That's also competing. The same word is used, compete. But they're nowhere near the same. Nowhere near the same. So I think people also need to be honest with what their goals are. Do you just want to go compete in a fun local throwdown every now and then? Good programming, 1 workout a day, you're going to be fine. You'll be fine. I'm not saying you'll win the competition, but here's the deal. I don't care if you win the competition because that's not important to me. What's important to me is people feeling good, not beating up their knees, backs, and shoulders, doing unnecessary volume for no real reason or benefit. So you can go do 1 workout a day, and then you go throw down in a 1-day competition. I'm sure it'll be tough, but you'll be fine, and you'll be good to go. Now, if that's competing, or does competing mean you're trying to go to the games, you're looking to have professional worldwide sponsors that pay for the mortgage on your home, pay for the car that you're driving, put food into your children's bellies, and whether you do well or don't do well in this competition means that your kid does or doesn't eat next month? Well, that's also competing in CrossFit, but they're orders of magnitude apart and require totally different disciplines, totally different time commitments, sacrifices, the whole 9 yards. So when somebody says compete in CrossFit, that's cool, but I think a little bit more clarification as to what their competition goals are should dictate the path that they choose. Hopefully that helps. Okay. That's it. Today is Saturday. I'm going to go enjoy my Saturday. Have a great day, and I will talk with you later.